Sales has changed, but building trust hasn't. Welcome to Bridging Generations in Sales and Outreach. I'm your host, Butch Nicholson, and this is where all generations come to learn how to communicate, make connections, and build trust. So we're glad to have you here today. Uh, I'm really excited about having my guest, Ed Frazer, on the show today. Ed is someone that I have known for a year or so, and Ed's got a fascinating background to share, and certainly has been in sales for long enough to know how trust used to be built and how it's built now. So, Ed, before we get started, I understand that you've had a big change in your life here recently. You're being called Grandpa now.
Grandpa is it? Yeah, five and a half months old granddaughter, Penelope Elizabeth, which is certainly changing my life and for the better.
Well, good. That's that your only first grandchild?
First grandchild, yeah. Long time
Well,
coming, but I was one of those fellows who married late, and so I'm deeply grateful for my two children and my first grandchild. So
my father used to say that he tolerated his children because he loved his grandchildren.
wise
So,
saved.
so Ed, give us just take it just a minute and tell us where you've been and how you got to where you are today.
So I am currently the chairman emeritus of the Trinity Group, which is a 30-year-old group based out of London and Boston that I was one of the founders with my former partner, Ambassador Ford Fraker, who was a banker like myself, and then he became ambassador to Saudi Arabia. So through various iterations of being a banker and other things, I ended up living in Iran, and then I moved to Kuwait, and then over to Cairo. So and Ford was a banker out in the Middle East also. So we decided at a point in time that we would set up a company to service investors and institutions from the region with products that they would really look at and possibly, if they liked it enough and they did their due diligence, they'd invest.
So Ed, you've been around for a while. You've been in sales for a long time, like I said before. Uh, how have you made the transition with all the new technologies and everything that's out there from how it used to be to where it is now?
Well, listen, today it's so much easier, with technology, at its peak and growing and getting faster. Certainly, you can get in touch with more people with greater frequency and with greater ease than you ever could in the past. However, in our particular line of business, which is, working with multi-billion dollar, direct investments and/or funds, people are not about to part with their money very quickly unless they have a sense that they know you, that there's a sense of trust, and that they can rely on you not to be a one-hit wonder. Because what we're doing here is great, and but to really understand the value of the woman or the man that's calling on you and doing what they're proposing to do, it takes a little while to get the trust. And we use trust as infrastructure. Really, we use all the technology around it to expedite and actually, make it easier for the client and ourselves to get the information flow there correctly. And then for them to do their due diligence and whatever. But ultimately, if you're putting significant amount of capital with someone, you want to know that person and you want to know that person well. And you want to know also if there is a problem, which undoubtedly will happen at some point in some investment. that person or persons are going to be there to help you navigate through the difficulties of that particular investment.
So let me ask you this question, Ed. I can't imagine. So I have a friend that says sales is hard, and I don't really believe sales is hard. It can be. Making a sale can be hard, but I can't imagine how much easier it would have been back when we started, just to be able, in 5 minutes I can find out everything about somebody, and it was a lot harder back then.
Well, you can get, go on to LinkedIn. There's 20 different ways to check out somebody. The reality is, though, you can check out somebody, but you still don't know them. You still, you know what their biography is. You know what they've gone to, what they've been, where they've gone to school, where they've worked, but it doesn't automatically, cover the issue of trust. And I think trust is still a big component in my business. And we say trust is infrastructure. We've got AI, we've got all of the other tools, but I also underscore the fact that trust is infrastructure in dealing with clients.
So Ed, I haven't heard trust is infrastructure, and I believe I know what you mean by that. But explain that a little bit, please.
Well, listen, if you're doing what we're doing now, you've got tools. You've got tools to talk to someone. You've got tools to present your product, whatever it may be. They then can go to AI, Claude, whatever, to get a readout on that particular person or that product, and you can get a probably 90% correct on the details of what that product is or that person is. The 10% you're never going to get from this AI. And and I've done it myself. I've used AI and I found out that the information that they were giving me was probably a month or 2 months old. And I started to interact with them and say, look, did you know this happened 3 days ago? And then, and they come back and they say, oh, you're right. So you can't rely on 100% of AI and all the algorithms that they have, because some of them are not really up to date. And it's also much more important when you're dealing with a person for the first time. You want to know who that person is. He may look great on paper, but he may not look great as a man in his background, his family, how he behaves. So I mean, so we would say that trust is infrastructure is primarily based on the morals and the character and the integrity of the person you're dealing with.
That's great, Ed. Ed, let me ask you this: do you have a story that you could share when maybe you didn't have the absolute best solution, but you got the deal because they trusted you more?
Well, I would say let's turn that around a little bit. Let's take a deal that didn't go well, and that created absolute. There was we had a deal that the guys in New York were putting together for us, and we were relying on their due diligence and all the work that they were doing, and so we then sold it to some of our very good investors and friends, and the deal blew up. And and they came to me and they said, well, what are you going to do? And then I had the mission to go back to the bank and say, listen, we have to do something here for these investors, and we need to do that for them. And it took probably the better part of a year to get the whole thing sorted out. But I would show up in their offices in the Middle East, month after month after month, when there wasn't the solution. And we finally got the solution. And then about a year later, they said to me, Ed, the reason why we still like doing business with you is because you hung in there with us when we had a difficult time. You didn't run away like a lot of people would do. They'd never come back to the region and say, hey, that's a deal that went sour, so what? But we believe that, you really have to be responsive to your client. Be there when he needs you. to try to solve the problem. And in this case, we're able to solve the problem. It doesn't mean every time we will, but we will do everything within our power to make that happen.
Good. So,
And therefore, so let me just
go
add
ahead, I'm
on to
sorry.
that, because you said, then how did we get the deals? After that, we did so much business with this group for a period of about 7 or 8 years, because they knew that we would be available to help them navigate, the difficulties and the vicissitudes of any particular, project that we were working on, or transaction, that we were going to be with them to find a solution. And, trust and solutions are how we look at things. You want to be part of the solution, not part of the problem.
Yeah, and Ed, I believe that you've probably become the guy that it sounds like you become the guy that your customers look at as the solution, not the sales guy.
Yeah, I think, they look at us because we've been around a long time. Our company's been around 30 years, and 30 years is no small number for the kind of business that we're in. And we tried to really run the ship with, with a very clear objective. And that clear objective is to have very good clients that we present to our investors, and that we do, the due diligence on those groups. And therefore, have a high conviction on what we're presenting to them. And look at it, as you know, it doesn't mean that they will buy or commit to a transaction every time you show them one, because they have their own asset allocation models. And those asset allocation models we know in general, and specifically it changes. So therefore, you want to be showing things to them that you think are, could be interesting. So we do. We usually show products that are very interesting and that have a high degree of success.
I have something I want to ask you about it, and I want to look at it both ways, so you can answer. You can answer in any order you want.
Yeah.
How have you seen older salespeople begin to use technology to make building trust easier? And then the other question is, how have you seen younger people who, because they can get immediate information, immediate stuff, but how they can take what they can get there to start building trust?
Well, let's break that down into 2 parts, Frank.
Yeah, I said 2 questions. 2 questions at one time.
No. I mean, let's just take a look at, if you are trading stocks, for instance, okay? If you are trading stocks, you can use algorithms, and if you look at the banks and how they hire, and the investment banks, it's usually about 80% is, people who are really good, smart, top of their class. And then the other 10% or 20% is basically math prodigies, who really understand the technology and can do, a lot in what they would, hedge funds and or banks on the trading side. So there, it's all about technology. It's all about technology. It's less about, trust as infrastructure. You have to believe, if you're working with JP Morgan or Citibank, that they are going to have, the best compliance in the world. And therefore you're going to be in good positions. However, the fact of the matter is, even with all the best technology, still don't make it. There's a black swan comes along, and something, really hits the market, and you're not able to act quick enough, and you can lose money. And, we saw it a lot with some recent, hedge funds and, funds that really thought they were, really hitting it out of the park, and it became a problem. So yes, that is really high velocity trading, algorithm based trading. All of those things are making it faster, swifter. Usually it should be safer, but not always. Not always. In our side of the business, which is really the private equity, the real estate, to some degree, private credit, all of those have to be sold to a buyer. If it's if it's a sovereign wealth fund, if it's a government related entity, if it's a pension fund, you really have to spend time with them telling them how this deal works. So it's a much longer sales process. And therefore, it's not quick. So that's the first part I told you about is the algorithm, and the way they hire people to do that, because it's all done on the net. It's all done on algorithms. Ours is really a little bit different. They're using algorithms to do their due diligence, but that's over time. They'll do legal due diligence. They'll do diligence on the structure. They'll do diligence on each of the partners. So there's a lot of work going into the private equity alternative asset space. And that takes a much longer time. So what is it that differentiates it? One is just high speed, volume trading. And the other is, yes, where you can use the technology for all of the due diligence that you're doing. And that's a broad spate of due diligence. They want to know about the person. A lot of times people will hire private detectives and private detectives to find out what is what's this man really like? Is he buying 2 planes, or is he, what's he doing? How does he live his life? So there's red flags that will come up in that part of the due diligence. So therefore, trusted infrastructure is critical.
So Ed, I'm sure you have a story you can share about a deal you worked on that took a long time, years, even maybe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Talk about that and how you used your skills to keep in front of that person and the value of trust there, and how you showed trust, how you built that trust with them.
Well, take a client that we know and we've worked with for quite some time, and he was pivoting his business from one side of the private equity business to more of a debt side of the business, and he took it, as a it's a marathon, not a sprint, and what he did is he said, "Listen, I need to take your advice as to how we should build this business." I said, it's a marathon, let's go out on this fund. If we get, 3 or 4 investors into this particular fund, then over the next fund and next fund, next fund, next fund, it will add on based upon 1, you as a man, number 2, your performance, and number 3, your commitment to the region. And that has all worked. And, on this most recent fund, we're doing incredibly well, on the fundraise on that particular one. But that was over, 15 years. We started with them, and, we worked consistently with them. And, but he was the perfect client because he's a real gentleman. He's a smart guy. He knew what he was doing, and his performance has been off the charts. He's been ranked number 1 in his sector for the last 10 years. So, performance sells, which is the other big part of it. But, it just shows his commitment to his business, but also his commitment with us to the part of the world that we're covering. So that took a long time to get from, fund 1 up to where we are now. So it doesn't happen overnight.
Ed, let me, I just had a thought while you were talking, and earlier in the show, you said, your business requires face-to-face. I mean, there's really no choice. But what would you tell a younger salesperson? What would you tell them about the reason that face-to-face at some point still really matters?
Well, I mean, if somebody calls you and you see them on a screen like this, and they provide you with a lot of collateral documentation that says the deal I'm presenting to you is a really good one, and here are references that you can use, and I want you to make it an investment with me by the end of next month or the deal's closed. What would you do?
I'd get on a plane
What
and
would
fly
you
to
do?
wherever they were.
Oh, he should get on a plane to fly to you. Is really what it is.
Oh
And
yeah, I'm
we
sorry.
have young
Got it back.
we have young salesmen in our in our team, and they come with me and come with some of the other senior folks. And we say, listen, as we transition from my generation to yours and below that, you need to get to know these people, and they have to get to know you, because it's, again, it's very important that they know that you're going to be there when there is ever a sign of disruption in the process, in the investing process. And so we preach that as doctor, use all of the technology you can. It's critical, it's important, it makes it streamlines a lot of things. But still, if you're asking people for of their money, significant check sizes, it could be from, $500,000 up to $100 million. They just want to know that you're going to be around to assist them when something happens. Now, a lot of people might say, well, look at, they told me this years ago that what we're doing now would, enfranchise our business, because it'd be so easy just to talk over and then COVID came along and they said, for sure, this will happen. When COVID was over, the smart guys got on a plane and started visiting their clients ASAP, which we did. And, and it showed it paid enormous dividends. So and we've seen it real time, technology at work, but technology as a tool to assist you, not as a tool to replace you in our specific side of the business. Technology might change people on the algorithm, the trading side, the high velocity trading side, and as hedge funds grow, they're going to have more technology and less people.
Hey, talk about the importance of trust, and even a story if you have one. The importance of trust when things don't go just like they were supposed to, or an expectation hasn't been met.
Well, I think I mentioned to you earlier about a group that we had a really. I was raising money, and they said, "Look at don't worry, this is really good. This is the guys in New York." And we then had trouble with that investment. And I made a commitment to go down and see this group month after month after month. And it took over a year. And I tell you, I would get off that plane and I'd be sweating because I knew I was going to get grilled. And, and after this thing was resolved, they said to me, about a year afterwards, they said, the reason that we're doing business with you is because you came when we needed you to help us, find a solution to this particular problem that we have. And it was solved, and I have to tell you, it was very uncomfortable for me for over a year to go to that particular place because I knew I was going to get drilled. And I did get drilled, and rightly so, I was there at the interface, and therefore I should be there to help them. You remain there and, and fundamentally come not to their rescue, but fundamentally come as part of the solution. Let's find a solution. It's a long time, Butch. It took over a year.
So, two more questions, Ed, as we get near the end of the show. No, three more questions. Number one, what would you tell a baby boomer or an older Gen Xer that how would you tell them that they need to start incorporating technologies while keeping their same know, like, and trust?
First, I would say that life is about the courage to change. You have to change. You can't stay static. So if you stay static, you've lost the game, and if you want to be in the game, you have to have the courage to change. Now, I'm an older guy. I certainly can't master technology the way that my kids can and my granddaughter will be able to. but I have people that I work with who can really, give me tutorials on how to do it. And when I learn how to do it, therefore, I'm pretty good at it. But the reality is that if you're not in the position to change, then the game's over, in my opinion. However, that's not the whole game for baby boomers. They know they have experience, and you cannot buy experience. And if they incorporate their experience in whatever field they're in, to amalgamate that, integrate it with the best technology that's good for their particular industry, then they can do a lot like you and I are doing right now. And it can be very, very, very positive, embracing technology in whatever you're doing. That goes, you go to you go to healthcare now, you go to the bank, you go to lots of places. There's technology at your fingertips. However, experience is not there. So you marry the two, and you've got you get a good opportunity.
So let's reverse that. You've got a man, a woman who's doing pretty good in sales, but all they're doing is sitting in they've mastered technology, and they're using technology to the very best it can be done. What would you tell them they needed to do to take it to the next level?
Get on a plane, get in a car, take a train, whatever it takes. Go out and visit your clients. It's really important that you visit your clients, your big clients, so they know who you are and that you value their business. And do it once a year. Go out, take them to lunch, take them to dinner, whatever it may be. But to make sure that they are valued as clients, and they are valued as people. And therefore, so if you embrace technology and you are a wizard at technology, I think it's still very important to make that personal touch.
Well, we've done these shows. I don't know. We've done 60 something shows, Ed, and
Yeah.
there's one thing that I've learned is the key, whether you're a baby boomer, whether you're a millennial, whatever it is, if your mind is open to change and your mind is open to finding a better way, you got a really good chance of being very successful.
Yeah, as I say, it's the courage to change. You cannot sit still. You have to be open and able and willing to see change as an additive and a great provider of new technology to teach you and to assist you in your objectives.
All right, Ed, we're getting near the show, in the end of the show here. One last question. What would Ed today tell Ed of 20 years ago?
I would tell Ed today, continue to do what you're doing, but really embrace technology as we've talked about throughout the show, as your pal. Technology is your pal. It will enhance everything that you're doing if you do it properly. If you embrace technology and you do it the wrong way, it can be a disaster. But if you do it the right way, it's going to just enhance and make your life easier across the board. And I was always one for looking, what's the next best thing? How can we make our lives a little bit easier? So I would just say to Ed 20 years ago, jump on the bandwagon, buddy. This is the way it's headed. Embrace it, enjoy it, and make sure that you're using it properly.
And I'm going to wrap up with one thing you said, Ed, that I think is really important. Whoever you are in life, but for sure in sales, you can't be afraid. You cannot let fear stop you.
Absolutely. The FDI index, as I call it. I'm in the financial services industry. So people said, it's a Dow Jones, it's the FTSE. What's the FDI index at? It's called fear, doubt, and insecurity. And if fear rules your life, if doubt rules your life, if insecurity rules your life, you are not at your peak with your clients, but moreover, you're not at your peak for yourself. And this is about you being the better person, you really harnessing all of the issues that contaminate your ability to do things in a positive way forward. I believe that, staying on top of your game, be that technology or trusted infrastructure, you better be right at the top of your game in all of those and stay positive. Because if you stay positive, you've got a good chance that people will be attracted to you and you won't have to promote as much. We learned a long time ago, it's attraction, not promotion. If you promote too hard, people get turned off. But if they see you, they like you, and they're attracted to you, they'll listen to you. And then it doesn't mean you'll get the job or the offer or whatever, but it'll mean that people will take time to listen to you.
Well, Ed, I want to tell you thank you for being on the show today. That was a lot of wisdom shared, and I appreciate that. And what I want the audience to remember, and Ed is a good example of this, people want to buy from people that they know, like, and trust. But a friend of mine told me this several years ago, and it is true as it can be. Your reputation walks through the door before you do. So it's important, especially with these modern tools where everybody can find out about you. You need to be that person that can be trusted, because reputation leads to revenue. So go out there, build the revenue, and we're going to have to edit this. So go out there and build that reputation and take advantage of that revenue.
Thank you so much, Butch. Wonderful being with you this afternoon.
Thanks, Ed. We'll see y'all next week.
Great. Thanks so much. All the best.